For every single one of us, there are a handful of defining moments in your life. For Howard Schultz, the mastermind behind Starbucks' empire, one of those moments came at just 7 years old. His father had just been fired from his delivery job after falling on ice and breaking his hip and ankle. The family had no medical insurance, no savings, and in that moment, no hope. Flash forward to today, and Howard Schultz is a multi-billionaire and is responsible not just for transforming the coffee industry, but several other industries most people might not realize. But to understand how a simple coffee store can become a global empire, we need to look at the 4 stages of Starbucks. And it all begins way back in the 60s. This is Gordon Bowker. Whilst travelling across Europe, he ordered a cappuccino from a small cafe in Rome, and it tasted different. Better, much better. You see, at the time, most Americans only drank cheap instant coffee or low-quality coffee from diners. When he returned from his trip, Gordon told 2 friends about this experience, and they decided to try and bring higher quality coffee to the American market.
This is the original Starbucks, a small store with no big plans. It opened in 1971 on Seattle's seafront.
However, it wasn't like you're imagining. The original Starbucks store sold bags of high-quality coffee beans along with the equipment needed to make coffee at home, but they didn't actually make or serve drinks in the actual store. With this business model, growth was slow but steady. By 1981, they had 4 stores, all based in Seattle, and the coffee was selling well. So well, in fact, that they caught the attention of Howard Schultz. Now, despite growing up very poor and with the difficulties with his father losing his job, through hard work, Howard had managed to build a career for himself. It hadn't been easy. He'd even had to sell his blood to afford to get through college. But by 1981, Howard was the vice president of a company, and that company just happened to be one of Starbucks' suppliers. This is how Howard Schultz first heard about Starbucks. He was intrigued by the amount of orders this little coffee company was making and went down to one of their Seattle stores one day to check it out for himself. He tried their coffee and was immediately hooked. So much so that he decided he wanted to be a part of Starbucks and reached out to the 3 guys who'd founded the company to see if they'd hire him. But the only person who thought Howard joining Starbucks was a good idea was Howard himself. The 3 founders of Starbucks were reluctant to let someone else join, and even Howard's own mum told him, "You're doing well, you have a future, don't give it up for some small company nobody's ever heard of." Despite this, Howard was persistent. He was unfulfilled in his current job and could see the huge potential for Starbucks. So he kept writing to the Starbucks founders, and after over a year of convincing, Howard joined the Starbucks team. Little did anyone know, that decision would change everything.
And when people say you're an evil empire bent on world domination, you say...
I hate that. I hate that.
The drink for himself, he thought, no one in America knows about this. I've got to take it back with me.
And I was captured emotionally by the Italian coffee bar, the sense of community, the third place between home and work, and I raced back to America thinking, this is what I'd like to try and do and transform the Italian coffee experience into the American society.
That trip to Italy was a revelation for Howard. He later wrote in his memoirs that originally Starbucks had sold great coffee beans, but they didn't sell it by the cup. They treated coffee as produce, something to be bagged and sent home with the groceries. But to Howard, he felt they were missing the heart and soul of what coffee was really about. He felt that just like Italy, they needed to make coffee not a product, but an experience. Howard was excited, right up until the moment he told the Starbucks founders about this idea, who quickly shot him down. They argued Starbucks was a retailer, not a restaurant or bar, and they couldn't just completely switch up their business model and start making drinks in the actual store. They felt things were going quite well as they were, so why risk all that to try and become a cafe? Howard became increasingly depressed. Eventually, he realized that his vision of bringing the full coffee experience to America just wasn't going to happen with Starbucks. And so in 1985, Howard left Starbucks to start his own company, Il Giornale, the Italian word for newspaper. He wanted the high-quality coffee of Starbucks, but with the atmosphere of the Italian cafes he loved. Once again, pretty much everyone told him it was a bad idea and a stupid move to leave a promising company like Starbucks. Over the next year, Howard spoke to 242 people about his idea, and 217 said no. The most common problem with his idea that he heard was that Americans would never spend that much money on coffee. Howard's business plan revolved around him selling coffee at $3 per cup. And at this time, coffee generally sold for around 50 cents per cup. You want people to pay 6 times more just for the experience? Yeah, right.
If I came to you in 1987 and I said to you, I want to build a company with Italian saying words that no one could pronounce for $3 a cup of coffee, would you invest?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
But if there's one thing you should have picked up on by now, it's that Howard Schultz is a very persistent man. And after speaking with hundreds of investors, he finally raised enough capital to launch his own Italian-style coffee shop. But hold up a second, I thought this was meant to be the story of Starbucks. What's going on here? Well, you see, within 2 years of Howard starting his own coffee shop, the Starbucks founders decided they wanted to sell up. And because they were still on great terms with Howard, they told him if he could get the money together, he could buy Starbucks.
I was thrilled, and the purchase price was $3.8 million for 6 stores, but I had no money, nothing.
So Howard once again set out on a mission to raise money from investors. Of course, after trying to raise money for his own coffee shop, he had a lot of investor contacts, and he went to all of them to tell them about this opportunity with Starbucks. And then, disaster strikes. One of those investors liked the idea of buying Starbucks so much that he tried to cut Howard out of the deal completely and told the Starbucks owners he'd buy it from them directly. Howard was devastated. He was so close to finally owning Starbucks himself, and it was snatched away at the last second. Deflated and depressed, he told one of his friends about the situation.
And he says to me, come to our office tomorrow morning and meet our senior partner. And I said, okay, who is it? And he said, Bill Gates Sr. And I walk into his office and he says, we're going to go for a walk. And I said, where are we going? And he said, we're going to go see the man. And we walked in. I don't know if he called him. I don't know if there was an appointment. I don't know anything. Bill Gates, all 6'7", 6'8", towers over his desk and says, you should be ashamed of yourself. This is not going to go down. You are going to stand down, and this kid is going to realize his dream.
And it worked. Thanks to Bill Gates' dad, the other investor backed down, and Howard Schultz raised the $3.8 million needed to buy Starbucks himself. Once he was CEO, Howard immediately transformed Starbucks from being just a shop to buy coffee beans to a place where they actually made and served you the drinks in store. He also rebranded his Il Giornale cafes as Starbucks stores, so everything was united under one name. Finally, Howard's vision of bringing the Italian coffee shop experience to America was a reality. And when you zoom out and look at the timeline, you realize what a few years it had been. In 1981, Howard discovered Starbucks, A year later, he joined the team. By 1985, he'd left the team to start his own coffee company. And now in 1987, Howard was back at Starbucks, this time as the CEO. He was finally the man in charge, ready to shape Starbucks' future. And trust me, things were about to get crazy. But before we get to the next chapter, have you thought about how to grow your business? Well, that's where today's awesome sponsor, Shopify, comes in. Shopify gives you all the tools you need to sell your products both online or in person. For example, even if you have no technical experience, you can easily create a website, customize your store exactly how you want it, and then begin accepting payments from all over the world. Not only that, but Shopify enables you to manage everything right from your phone. You can see your recent orders as well as your analytics on the Shopify app, so you can check up on exactly what your customers are buying and from where. You even get notified of orders while on the go as well. For me personally, one of the goals of having a business was to have more freedom, the ability to travel and not be tied to one spot. And that's why I think Shopify works so well. They give you all the tools to build your business, but make it super easy to manage it from anywhere. And the best part is, you can literally try it out completely free for yourself. Just click the top link below to get started today. Howard's strategy as CEO could be described as aggressive expansion. When he took over in 1987, they had 17 stores. But now Howard had found a business model that worked, and he had the backing of investors, it was easy to keep replicating it. Starbucks began rapidly opening more and more stores, everywhere. And not just in the US, Howard wanted to take Starbucks global, and by 1998, Starbucks had opened stores in Japan, the Philippines, the UK, and more. In fact, in the year 2000, Howard stepped down as CEO to focus specifically on global domination.
We're opening 5 new stores a day.
That's a new store every 5 hours, 24/7.
Yeah.
At its peak, over 7 new Starbucks stores were opened every day. And by 2008, Starbucks had almost 17,000 stores worldwide. With Howard leading things, they'd grown the store number by almost 10,000%. Starbucks was seemingly everywhere.
One day, every house in America will have their own private plumbing to Starbucks.
Can I help you?
I'd like to get my ear pierced.
Well, better make it quick, kiddo. In 5 minutes, this place is becoming a Starbucks.
Who would have believed that Americans would line up by the millions to pay $4 for a cup of coffee?
However, when the financial crisis hit, that rapid growth came to a sharp halt. Starbucks' stock price dropped 50% as consumers ditched their expensive coffee habits. But honestly, the financial crisis was far from Starbucks' only problem. That rapid expansion over the last 2 decades had been covering a sinister problem bubbling under the surface.
The growth and success of the company in many ways covered up mistakes.
In a company email that got leaked to the public, Howard identified several issues with the company, including customer dissatisfaction. He mentioned that the quick expansion had led to a watering down of the Starbucks experience. Basically, Starbucks was in a bad state.
And the company found itself in tremendous financial trouble. In less than a year, the people didn't realize it, of facing insolvency.
So, Starbucks decided to reappoint Howard as CEO. He'd spent so many years focused on expansion, and now his strategy was to stop expansion completely. Instead, he wanted to restore Starbucks to its founding principles. He wanted to make the stores an experience again.
Unlike most consumer brands, the brand was really built by the experience.
So firstly, he removed automatic espresso machines. They made the service faster, but removed the romance and theatre of watching a barista craft a coffee. He also brought back things like the in-house grinding of coffee beans, which gave the stores that coffee aroma. A lot of the decisions he made didn't make a lot of business sense on the surface, but again, it was all about focusing on the user experience.
And one of the biggest unorthodox decisions we made at the height of our problems is we decided to close every store in America to retrain over 100,000 people at a cost of $7 million.
Many were shocked by this, and it generated a lot of media headlines and discussion. But Howard felt it was vital to retrain baristas how to perfectly craft their signature drinks. And in a weird way, the decision was actually good marketing. It helped announce to the world Starbucks was returning to its roots and focusing on quality. And it worked. Company growth rocketed up by 143% in 2009. And it's no secret that Starbucks have now continued to thrive and expand again. In fact, at the time of this video, they have over 32,000 worldwide stores. But again, let's just hold up a second. The story of Starbucks is undeniably a success story, and Howard's rise from poverty to billionaire is remarkable. He saw an idea, brought it to a new market, and through hard work and great business strategy, built an empire. However, what's possibly even more remarkable is where Starbucks is heading. I have a question for you. What business is Starbucks actually in? If you just said coffee, I'd say that's debatable. If you've ever seen the movie The Founder, you may be familiar with this scene.
You're not in the burger business. You're in the real estate business.
And with Starbucks, it's kinda similar. There are several different industries they're arguably competing in, which can tell us a lot about the future of Starbucks. Firstly, in real estate, there is something called the Frappuccino effect, which refers to where there's a significant increase in nearby property value because a new Starbucks opens nearby. Seriously, according to Quartz, the average American home rose in value 65% between 1997 and 2014, whereas the average home within a quarter mile of a Starbucks rose in value by 96%. And whilst there's a number of reasons for this, one is that Starbucks has had great ability to select up-and-coming neighborhoods for their stores. They managed to buy the location before the neighborhood prices shoot up. In fact, Starbucks has a team dedicated to selecting new locations for stores, based on a wide range of demographic and property data. And this analytical approach has helped Starbucks consistently find profitable locations. But this is also a self-fulfilling prophecy, because Starbucks moving to a neighborhood in itself encourages other restaurants and bars to pop up in the same area, thus making it busier and more popular. In other words, a huge key to Starbucks' success comes from their location choices and ability to gentrify an area and increase its perceived value. Of course, a lot of people hate this and think Starbucks are responsible for homogenizing cities, making every town look the same, and ripping out the culture, tradition, and soul of a place. They've even had protests and riots against them on many occasions.
There is a bit of a Starbucks blowback.
Sure.
Rolling into town, crushing the life out of the mom and pop coffee shop.
But that hasn't stopped Starbucks, and this will likely continue to be an important part of their future. There is already a Starbucks in pretty much every affluent area you can think of, but they'll be looking to further expand into new locations they haven't yet reached. However, there is also a second industry Starbucks is in that's rarely talked about, that can perhaps reveal even more about why Starbucks has been successful and why they will continue to thrive. And whilst I've seen this idea presented in a couple of places, one of the best explanations came from a video by Polymatter titled "Why Starbucks is Actually a Bank." You see, instead of paying with cash or card, customers can add money to their Starbucks account on the Starbucks app and use that to pay. Doing this gives you more reward points so you can redeem more free drinks. Now, Starbucks is the most popular restaurant rewards app there is, and because of its size and loyalty, people aren't afraid to keep money in the app. In fact, there's an estimated $1.5 billion right now in people's Starbucks balances, which is more than 85% of US banks. Of course, that money will eventually be used to buy coffee, but in the meantime, it provides Starbucks with an interest-free loan. Now, here's where it gets crazier. A normal bank storing people's money has to keep a huge amount of cash on hand in case of withdrawals. But since Starbucks' money can't be withdrawn from the app, they don't have to do that, meaning they can heavily invest in growth in a way other companies can't, because they literally have billions from customers just sitting in their accounts that Starbucks can spend to grow and expand their business. Starbucks now gets 26% of its revenue from products other than beverages. And of that 74% that is from beverages, a huge chunk is from drinks other than coffee. So, as you can see, the reason Starbucks has done so well since Howard took over is that the original founders were focused on the wrong thing. They were focused on the coffee, and the success of Starbucks and its future plans are not just about coffee at all. From the moment Howard Schultz became CEO the first time around, the real product Starbucks sold was the experience. Starbucks have even started trialing their reserve roasteries, massive 20,000 square foot malls designed to be tourist attractions where baristas experiment with different brewing methods and crafting new innovative drinks. So, if you've ever wondered why Starbucks became a coffee behemoth, whilst coffee shops with even nicer tasting coffee didn't succeed, the answer is simple: it was never really about the coffee.